going on, everyone? This is part two to the two-part podcast, as you can tell by the title. The first one involved Mr. Flip. He was a part of the first part, but unfortunately his phone died halfway through. So if you do want to check that out and you haven't seen that part of this conversation yet, go do that first before you watch this, or watch this first and then go back and watch that because you don't like doing things in order, and that's also fine. No judgment here. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy.
But I really feel like, unfortunately, as much as I wouldn't want to say this, it feels like Trump's going to win again, just because Biden is just,
yeah.
He's like a dude who is like, he had a fucking lobotomy.
Flip
Flip, yeah.
Flip left?
Flip deaf.
No. Okay. All right. Your head's huge now on the thing because of how. Okay. All right. Hold on. You're good if you want to keep talking. I didn't want to cut your point off for your train of thought.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, I don't know. I think Trump's going to win again just because he has such a strong backing, and certainly, it seems like from the more liberal side of things, there's a pretty big fucking divide of people who wanted Biden, people who wanted Bernie, people who are like, I'm never voting for Biden if Bernie's not the dude, and then everyone on the right seems to just love Trump, and there's not even close to any opposition. So I'm like, it seems like it's just gonna hit him for 4 more years. But I mean, what I would hope comes out of our 4 or 8 years of Trump is I hope that moving forward, people start to become a little bit more policy oriented. I do think, unfortunately, I guess some people think it's a good thing, but I think we put too much emphasis on people just based off of their personalities, which it's really easy. If someone's really charming, or if someone says stuff you like, just generally speaking, it's really easy to be like, well, of course I support this guy. But I mean, that
was the whole thing that I guess I don't remember who coined it, but I remember hearing it from Joe Rogan about like how we held every 4 years we hold a popularity contest, and that ends up being the president, and that's really bad.
Right.
That's not
that's not in 2016 as Trump was getting closer and closer to becoming president. I would talk to people pretty regularly about it, and I'd be like, so what policies do you like? And there were not really a lot of answers, because it turns out that on the campaign trail, he didn't really talk about much other than building a wall and draining the swamp and all that stuff, which, we all see how well all that has happened. So
yeah, I don't know. I'm concerned that people will be. You don't think people will learn that lesson from here from the past 4 years? I guess I'm giving people credit. I think that they will, or I'm afraid that they will, and that the lesson will kind of go too far. It'll swing too far to the other side and go, all right, well, we need politicians to do it. And I'm like, no, like that also is bad. Like,
yeah, it's super tough because, again, for me, I'm more or less interested in just the policies people are advocating for, even though, like, generally speaking, I was definitely more in favor of like Sanders than anyone else. There were some things that I didn't necessarily agree with him either, but I was just like, well, if I just look at what these people want to do, I agree with him the most. And it's not because it's not because a bird landed on a podium when he was giving a speech, or because he has a fucking laundry unfolding on his like rocking chair in his living room or whatever, which those, if you want to talk about a person's character, it's fine. But I hope that going forward we could be like, well, what do these people actually stand for, and what do they want to get done? Again, I don't want to go too far into like the politics shit, and by that I mean I probably will. But since Trump's been in office, I've talked to my family they're all super hardline conservative, all very, very.
It's weird how many
they're all Trump supporters.
Are like a lot of people's families are very,
Yeah.
very
I mean,
conservative.
our family, especially, and obviously I'm generalizing, but
Right.
broadly speaking, it seems like a lot of Hispanic people, and more specifically like Cuban families, tend to be conservative or vote Republican a
Interesting.
majority of the time. And
My
part
family
of
is
that,
too.
yeah,
Well,
sure.
my parents are, I should say. My
Right.
my brother and I are not. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm for sure the black sheep of the family, where they are like, how can you think you're right when the whole family disagrees? And then I'm listening to the shit they're saying, and I'm like, man, I don't know what the fuck is going on over there. But I mean, like my family grew up when Castro was coming into power, and so
Okay.
like communist,
Yeah.
authoritarian
That was the
rhetoric
norm.
does not resonate with them very well. So it's pretty easy for them to take a hardline Republican or hardline conservative. And to them, they're just like, yeah, we like Trump. We like that, he all the shit that everyone said. He tells it how it is and all this stuff. But when we talk about what has he done, it'd be like, what has he done in office that you like? And there's not really a lot of answers. They talk about the economy, but that's mostly out of the president's control, honestly, for the time periods we're talking about.
Yeah. The thing that I would say is I'm willing to bet I'm not well read or researched or anything like on this. I'm willing to bet that there are some things that he has done that are good, or we'll see that it's good, or
sure,
whatever.
yeah.
Like I'm sure
there's a couple.
There's yeah.
The First Step Act for the helping people who are like getting out of prison or something, like assimilate back into society and like get jobs and stuff. I think that's good. I think generally we have like a pretty big problem with like our justice system as a whole, and definitely like incarceration of people for nonviolent crimes or for all sorts of like really weird shit that we're like, okay, you served your time and that means you're good, except you're not. You're just gonna be fucked for the rest of your life. So it's pretty weird, but he signed that, and I think that's pretty good.
One of the things I think that would alleviate that, I don't think that employers should be able to ask whether or not you've been charged with a felony.
With a felony?
Yeah, I don't think they should be able to ask if you. I don't think your criminal record should matter. I know that sounds like very broad and like it's a very a bold statement, I guess. But the reason I put that there is because like I guess this only is the case if the prison system works. If the whole point of you serving your time is for reformation, then why do you care whether or not someone has had a criminal record? I say this as a person who does not have a criminal record, so take that as you will. But
no, I think that's really fair. Actually, I think you hit it perfectly. That there's a big problem right now between people trying to discern whether prison or any kind of jail sentence is supposed to be to help people get back into society, or if it's a punishment for the thing they did.
It set up here.
Definitely doesn't. Definitely doesn't. But that's the question. You're like, well, if we just throw someone in jail as punishment, but we don't do anything to help them live a better life when they get out, or we don't do anything to help them while they're in to feel like they have resources or whatever, then those people tend to go out and either not do much or just fall back into committing crimes, whatever it may be. And usually with small offenses, they just do more small offenses.
I hear stories, and I've seen stories or know people that like they go in, they get not degrees, but I forget what, certificates and certifications and whatnot. Right, while they're there, which I think that's how it should be. Yes, your life is going to suck because you're going to be living behind bars, and it shouldn't be pleasant. Like I'm not saying that we should be spending extra money to make sure people are having a good time while they're in prison, because that's the whole point of prison. It's supposed to suck.
Right.
But I think
if we, as long as we're hitting humane, I don't think it needs to be like
it needs to be
fancy.
Humane. Yeah, like it.
But
it like your 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 time. I don't know if you've ever seen that show Scared Straight.
Yes.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
hilarious. But also there's a episode where they're reading one of the amendments. I guess I think it's in it's either amendments or constitute. I don't know. It's some major piece of law or whatever. And they're reading this to the kids, and there's a line that says every man. I'm summarizing it like drastically, but it says basically every man is free unless something, one clause, and then the other clause was being incarcerated by the government. And it was like, and his point was like, while you're here, you're a slave of the government. Like that's just how it is. And this is gonna sound a little weird. I'm okay with that as long as it's humane and that people are able to gain something. Well, not gain something, I guess. I just don't want people to come out of prison and be societally worse off than when they entered. They should be coming back in at the same place that they were when they left, if that made any sense.
Sure. I mean, in an ideal sense, I guess for me, I would want people to go out and leave better than the situation they were in. And that doesn't necessarily have to be like, financially or whatever, but just with some kind of tool, some kind of resource that they have so that they can go out and hopefully not end up committing crime again. Like that's part of the issue when we look at like populations of people that get out of prison, is a lot of them are like reoffenders of whatever the fuck they did, or some kind of escalation of whatever crimes are being committed. So it's like, well, if we have a system where we're locking people up and we're saying you're gonna serve time for whatever crime you committed, I guess on one level, one of the things that I think is really shitty that I think a lot of people end up falling into is kind of like what you were saying earlier about like jobs looking at your whether or not you had a felony. I don't have an answer as to whether or not they should or shouldn't be able to look at it. But if we have a system where it's like, okay, you've committed whatever, an armed robbery, and we've decided that 10 years of prison is your, however you want to phrase it, that is what you have to serve to make up for what you did. When you get out, you shouldn't still have that being held against you for everything you do.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Because if we are believing that what you did was serve the time for your crime that you committed, it should kind of end there. Now, obviously, there's sexual offenses or domestic abuse cases where you're like, okay, there's going to be restrictions on things you have maybe going on in the future. But there's a lot of circumstances where you're like, just telling, and a big one that's been coming up the past couple of years is like the ability to vote, where it's like, well, felons, should they be able to vote? And I'm like, that seems wild to tell someone they can't vote, because it's not the same as like, oh, this person tried to murder their wife and then they got out of jail, and we don't want them to be able to purchase a firearm or whatever.
Is this after they have left like jail or prison or something?
Oh yeah.
Really?
There are states where people are trying to fight for felons. I mean, some places trying to fight for felons to be able to vote, and places where they're trying to make it so felons can't vote.
I can understand. I can understand the idea of like, while they're incarcerated.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can kind of understand where somebody's mind may be coming from. But after they've been let go, I don't understand why you would even. Why that's even a conversation.
That's there are people. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there who think that the prison system and everything that comes after that is punishment for what you've done, and it certainly is to some extent. But the idea that you want to punish someone with no intention of preventing these kind of things in the future, or you want to punish them but then also like strip them of like basic US citizen rights for the rest of their life, when we tell them that technically they've served their sentence for what they did.
This is me taking things, I guess, to an extreme. But I think that would even so I'm going to try to say this without seeming like the worst person.
Okay.
I think that if something like that were to exist, it would have to even go to like uh what's the word, pedophiles and like domestic abusers,
Sure.
things like that. As bad as that sounds, however, at the same time, if the point of the prison system or whatever that punishment system is for reformation, then these people, the end result is that they are reformed, right? So if they are, like, and I get it, that's a super hard thing to like
Yeah,
swallow,
that's
because
definitely
you're putting people possibly in danger by making a decision like that.
right.
But that if that's the case, then what's the point of the prison system for them? At that point,
I
just
think
kill them. Like,
a really
if
easy way to sort of catch all a lot of it is kind of just saying like if we have a system that's meant to take people that have committed a crime and get them off the street, ideally what we want isn't just to keep them out for 5 minutes or whatever, to be like, hey, you're not going to be able to do that for 5 years, but then when you get out you can do it again. Like, we'd want people to be like in a situation where we prevent those things or do what we can to prevent those things from happening again. I think that's kind of what we would want to do. So if it's like, oh, this person committed a violent crime, we'd be like, well, what can we do, or how is it motivated, or what's going on in their life, or we can try to prevent that from happening again. And I guess however that works best for whatever the certain situations are
that's, I think, is
is
the
probably
hard
what
thing.
we should.
The hard thing, I think, is determining what, like, I think each situation is different enough that the solution to each of those problems would be so broad, or there's be so many ways that you'd have to have in place to solve everyone's problem. So, like, say
Sure.
for instance, like, you may have a person who, they're serving prison time for like domestic violence. Um, so you have two people serving prison time for domestic violence. One of those people has like some chemical, like brain chemical imbalance. Like, this is just a disorder. He's just unfortunately a very aggressive person. And if you got to go, let me know. Okay.
No. I just saw a bright light and I was like,
Oh,
what was
okay. But like, so that's guy A. Guy B, on the other hand, he. I'm trying to think of the lighter, because to me, like, there's always the option of like just getting in your car and driving away, like that is always there, or just walking down the street, not like just disengaging.
Yeah.
But let's say like he was in an abusive relationship too, and like he decided to fight back, and in doing so really hurt the other person. I don't think the person should really be serving prison time for something like this, but let's say that he did. I think those two situations are very different. Like, where you have one
Sure.
person who, like, I don't know what you do for that person that's humane, because like you're now talking about introducing like drugs, and like you're really trying to rewire or make someone, you're trying to change the way someone's brain works, essentially. Whereas the other person, like, was just in a shitty situation. Like, those two,
Right.
like, the way our system
think,
works now, it treats both of those people the same. Whereas I think it should be
Yeah.
treating them differently.
Yeah, I mean that's
But how do you do
that's
that?
certainly true. There's certainly a problem with just how we treat and identify certain situations, and I mean, especially like, I guess for your example specifically, we have an unbelievable problem in the United States. As much as people want to pretend we don't, or that it's technically better. We have a huge problem when identifying like mental illness and how we're supposed to actually deal with that, or
Oh, it's
identify
bad.
that, or just accept that that's a thing. It's bad. It's definitely really bad. So yeah, I don't know. I'm certainly not in a position where I can say like, hey man, I know how to reform tire. Just give me a chance. Give
You
me
know how to
1 weekend
what?
and I'll do it. I'm not here like, hey man, I'll write down, I'll get you some notes on a napkin on how to reform the entire prison system.
Yeah.
I got you. Like I don't
got
have
it.
that.
I got
But
I got
there's
everything.
certainly an issue, and it seems like and again, I say this from a lot of people I've talked to, people I've seen online, my own family, that there are a lot of people who are just like, listen, man, if you're a criminal, you just go to jail and you just get fucked, dude. Like if they don't feed you, they don't feed you. If you get, sexually assaulted, whatever, dude, LMAO, like, and it's just wild. I mean, it's really fucking weird. It's really like I guess I just don't understand the mentality that a lot of people have, that they're just like, oh, if you commit a crime, and I get it for some, like there are obviously very high level crimes, if we're talking about sexual assault, if we're talking about murder, if we're talking about like beating the shit out of your wife or your kids, like totally fucking, no justification whatsoever. Not that I'm like trying to, well, there's probably no justification to beat the shit out of your kid.
Yeah.
But in a situation where it's like a mutual domestic violence case, I feel like that would be very unique, where it'd be like, okay, well, we have to look at this a specific way. If it's just like a dude just full punching bag, little Mac, on his wife, like that's probably not okay.
KO punch.
And yeah, for those, I'm like, I'm, I still think there's like a level of, again, humane treatment that should be there, but those I get it. If people are like, hey, this dude tried to murder his wife with a gun, I'm like, when he gets out of jail, if there's a law that's like, if you've committed domestic abuse or domestic violence, or you've attempted to threaten someone's life with a firearm, and we want to make it either impossible or extremely difficult to get a firearm, I'm like, I get that. But for ones that are like, oh, well, you can't get a job at the Walmart
right, that's the kind of stuff.
Warehouse because you had a felony, and it's like, well, what the fuck are these people supposed to do? If you lock them out of society, what are they going to do other than commit more crimes?
Like,
right, it just doesn't make sense.
When it comes to gun stuff, I'm 100% there with you. Like, if you went to jail or you went to prison for a gun related, like violent gun crime, say no one got hurt, you don't get to have a gun. I'm like that. I
think a lot of people are there. Luckily.
Yeah, it's like you don't like it's to me that's very simple. And I know there's some people that are like, oh, but my rights. And I'm like, well, you fucked that up when you made that decision right there. Yeah. Like that's the one that's where you went wrong. Not where we're telling you can't have a gun. You fucked up a long time ago. But yeah, I don't know, man. I just think. I know this is a long ways from talking about the president, I guess, but I guess, do you think that in the long run his presidency will be a good or bad thing? Like, that's, I guess, where my head was at initially.
It's such a difficult question to answer. Like, reluctantly, I feel like you want to say a good thing, but it's a good thing in the same way that you would say, like, it's a good thing my kid put their hand on the stove because now they'll never do it again. And that's kind of a good, but you're like, I mean, if I could help it, I wish that didn't happen in the first place. But I guess since we've already been through it, we can look on the bright side. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm spoilers. I'm not super keen on the president we have right now. Yeah. And I like to think that I do, my research and I pay attention to stuff and I read up on stuff, and I'm not just like I think, and I'll say this for sure, I think there are things that people are super unfair to Trump about. Now, that's not to say there's any lack of things to correctly criticize.
I think the stack of papers of the legitimate criticisms, it towers over the things that people are very unfair about.
But people say stuff all the time where it's like, it's kind like the shit you're talking about is so fucking irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. But again, he's a dude that for the most part didn't even run on any actual fucking platforms. No one knew what he wanted to do other than, again, drain the swamp and throw Hillary in jail and build the wall. And the wall's been a giant fucking, I mean, first you have to argue whether or not it would even work, and then you get to the point where you're like, well, it's still a fucking mess, and declaring a national emergency and like superseding Congress, and you're like, oh, is that an abuse of his presidential powers? Is it not? Should he have done it? It's like, it's such a fucking mess, and for what? to you know, I don't know. It's just why it's a wild fucking ride, and the shit that people give him credit for, I'm just like, I don't even know if most of it is related to him.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked with my family about like the economy, and they're like, the economy's so good right now, it's never looked better. And then I show them like a chart. Fuck, I wish I had the source on me, because now I sound like fucking no source Andy. But
You're good.
I remember, because I've argued it so many times, and I'm like, oh, here's this information about the way like our economy, how much it's been increasing over the past 10 years, and you'll notice it's just been a consistent line upward. And so it's like, how much effect, it's just natural, it's just going in that direction. And then, you know, on the unfair point, there are people on my Facebook who are like, the economy doesn't look very good now, does it, Trump? Does it, Republicans? I'm like, I don't think Trump could have helped the fucking global pandemic.
Dude, he
that's kind of out.
He fucking
like,
he had a
that's
jar.
Kind of
he fucking broke it out.
His, yeah, he had the T virus capsule. And he's like, here you go, Wesker. Oh no, he fucking dropped it. There you go. Whoops.
Jeez,
we're fucked. So I don't know. I mean, it's. I want to be done with this, and we'll have another 4 years, probably. So it's not a good time.
So I would like to be optimistic and believe that, like, maybe, man, it sounds so, because I don't feel like I lean either way.
Sure.
Mostly because I think both extremes bother me so much that I find it dangerous to go either way. But what I will say is well, I think Sanders was definitely. It's really frustrating what's going on. What's happened with him twice.
Yeah.
And
full robbery.
Yeah, just full actual yoinks.
Robbery.
But every time they keep putting people up against this guy, that, like, it's so easy. It's so easy to just be like, oh yeah, well, that guy sucks, and I guess I haven't died yet with this dude, so I guess I'll stay here. It's like that whole the mindset of the abused wife thing, where it's like,
sure,
like you it's like, yeah, he sucks, and he punches me a lot, but he makes sure to never leave any marks. I don't know if this guy will leave any marks, so, you know, I'm gonna just stay right here. It's like, it's
you know, I know it's unfair of me to say, and it's obviously just, you know, I'm doing the thing. That's whatever. Fuck it. We're here now. We just run it. I generally, I'm not a huge fan of Republican policy, or
that's fair.
The more right leaning, I guess, demographically, you know, what people consider more right-wing stuff. I'm not a huge fan of that. And I guess there's two branches. You have like more economic, and then you have like more social. I think socially, I'm very far past it. And economically, I'm like, well, capitalism's probably fine. There's like problems, whatever, but that's its own thing. But there's something so unique about how much I dislike Trump as a person. It's not like it's not like if fucking Ted Cruz is like an actual, like, the biggest dipshit I've ever seen in my entire fucking life. But even he would be like, oh, well, he's just like the normal level of just like Republican, conservative, you know, what a politician. Trump is like this next level where, like, you listen to him and you're like, dude, it's just so painful to even listen. And again, you know, people will be like, oh, it's you got the Trump derangement syndrome, but I'm just like, what do people hear? Like, I feel like my fucking radio frequency is tuned to the wrong signal, because I'm like, do people hear the same shit come out of his mouth that, like, I do? There's no fucking way. Right? Like, this is impossible. I just don't know. I just don't fucking know what I don't know.
It's a weird position that I think we are in as Americans, but there was one thing that reminded me of. I don't know if you listen to Bill Burr's podcast at all, but that's fair. Recently there was one where he was talking about a speech that Trump had, and somebody in the press was asking him a question. They stood up and they asked him, I don't remember how the question was phrased, but his response was like, oh, you want to know about the something in Mexico? And then, because clearly he wanted to spin that way, and the person was like, "No, that's not what I said. I said this." And then he didn't answer the person's question. He just was like, "Oh." Like, because he didn't get to do the thing that he wanted.
Yeah.
It was so funny, but also
Yeah.
so sad.
I've argued with a lot of, I don't really know where they come from. I guess they're just people like that I went to school with and people that I met from like Yu-Gi-Oh and YouTube and stuff in the past. But I've argued with a lot of people online.
I want to find
and I guess...
the conservative Yu-Gi-Oh player. I need to find.
Oh, they're out there, and they're
like
not good because
that sounds like a
they
person
can't read. They're having problems, dude. They can't read.
Oh my god,
they're having issues. But you know, I've argued with a lot of people, and there's a very real dialogue tree where they're just like, well, I know this specific kind of group of points or facts that I can talk about. So I just need to do anything possible to guide you into it. And if that means like literally bringing up shit that's totally irrelevant, then I'm like, that's not part of the point. And they're like, yeah, but I bet. So you'd be like, oh, like I think there's a problem with this thing where we started this fucking tariff war with China. That's probably a mistake. And they're like, oh yeah, well, what do you think about people trying to have $15 minimum wage? You're like, what the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about? And it's like, yeah, because you sound a lot like a Bernie supporter. So first I want to talk to you about minimum, and I'm like, that's not what we're talking about. And then you're just down like literal Fallout style, where it's just like, here's your 3 options, and you failed the speech check on this one, so you're down to this next one.
That's where the whole NPC thing is from, right?
It's literally that though. It's literally that where they're just like, here's your 3 options of things you can tell me or leave the conversation, and you're like, all right, I guess. Like, it's a rough time.
The only reason I still like, I say still because I think that in time this could change, but the only reason I still like talking about stuff like this is because I tend to talk to people about this stuff who are more knowledgeable than me. So like the hard thing, and I know a lot of like conservative speakers will go out and like, oh, I can't find a fucking left person to debate me and all this stuff. And like, I'm finding it the exact opposite. So far in my I won't even say close group of friends. I say, no, you know what? So I think in my top 50 people that I know, in my head, 2 come up conservative. That's it. Now, the thing is, I don't talk to a lot of my friends about politics, so it's possible that there are more. But I think what's happened is it's become commonplace to shit on conservatives.
And so definitely has. Yeah.
So people just don't say it. Like literally, I had someone on a podcast a little bit ago, and we talked, had a great conversation. It was awesome. And then after the podcast, found out that person was very right leaning, and there were many times for them to bring that up in the podcast, but they purposefully didn't. And I understand that, and I respect that. I'm not trying to bring people out and like, hey, look at this guy. Right. Internet, you see that? Like, that's not the goal here. It's just, but I did notice that moment and go, kind of in my head, I went, oh wow, it's gotten to that now, like where you're ashamed of your beliefs. And I'm like,
yeah, that's where people talk about like the silent majority thing.
Yeah,
that people are like, that's why Trump won. They're like, everyone talks about hating Trump, but how the fuck does he poll so well? Where the fuck does he get the votes from? Like, there's presumably just a ton of people who do agree with him or do like him, but they just don't talk about it because of however they feel, whatever. And I guess for me, like, part of the thing that's really difficult, and I guess I try to be fair where I can be. Obviously I certainly have my biases and my leanings.
Sure, everyone does.
There are people who are, I guess more liberal or more to the left or more progressive, however you want to phrase it, whatever, we want to use. There are people like that where generally if you would separate them, you'd be like, oh, they're on my side. But I think they make really bad arguments. They argue from, they use, just totally illogical, talking points, or they're bringing up stuff that's not relevant, or they say things that are just like totally wholeheartedly like false. And I just don't get it, because I'm like, it doesn't make it better. Like when I talk to people like my family or random people on Facebook, or Yu-Gi-Oh players that don't know how to read their fucking cards, when I talk to them and I argue with them about whatever the fuck it may be, whether it be like gay marriage, or whether it be, you know, whether or not trans people should have the right to use certain bathrooms or whatever. When I argue with these people, I'm like, well, I find it pretty easy to like look up information and use it and make my points and whatever. And typically I'm like, oh yeah, like whatever, however they feel at the end of the day, like I'm pretty comfortable knowing that they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. That's definitely not like a solely conservative thing to be like, conservatives are dumb and people on the left are. It's definitely up to the person.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I've met a lot of people who they're like, I'm with you, man. I'm progressive. And I hear the shit they say. I'm like, dude, it would help if you never argue with people, because you're just not making good points. You just don't make any fucking good points. So I mean, I get it. And again, it sucks, but you know, unfortunately, it feels like people tend to think, and or it's what we see, that a lot of people, a lot of the things that we tend to not agree with, as far as like bigotry, and I know there's a whole argument about like labeling things and when it's fair to label things as you know, bigoted or racist or whatever, but it seems like a lot of that kind of stuff tends to come from people who are right-leaning. That doesn't mean that everyone who's right-leaning is like that. But when those things happen, they tend to be people who are more right-leaning, and maybe they're, you know, more extremists, or maybe it's a very small minority, and I would believe that. But I think that's where that sort of idea comes from, is when people see someone being racist, they look through and they see like, maybe they see a bunch of like Trump shit and stuff, or if they see someone being, you know, oh, I hate gay people, and they're like some like Bible thumping, you know, conservative from like the rural South or whatever, you're like, well, yeah, it definitely looks like it.
It's
obviously weird. The left has theirs too.
Yeah, it's that kind of stuff. I find myself on that end of the spectrum of like, not every fucking thing is racist. Like I feel like that thing has swung so far it's too far. Like small shit used to be like, people used to like jokes, I guess now, or like, or it's not now, I think things are coming back. I just remember a time where things were really bad, and like you had comedians just getting like axed left and right, and people were just like, what the fuck, you can't believe you said. I'm like, buddy, like that's not it. I understand why you're upset, I get it. But let me tell you that this dude that you're fighting right now, that's not the guy. There's guys that you think, like, you're just putting a hat on that dude. You're literally putting the fucking Soviet hat on that guy, and you're going after him. What I need you to do is take that hat back off of him, find the actual dude, and then exert your energy there. And that's the kind of stuff that like annoys me, I guess. I
mean, I think we talked about it when I was on your podcast for the first. Well, I guess the first time. Yeah. I was gonna say the only time, but I'm like, what the fuck are we doing right now? Yeah. When I was on there the first time, we talked about it a little bit, like the comedy, and I guess to not go over the whole thing again for that subject. Yeah. Like my thing is basically like, I think people just need to be responsible with what they're saying. So I don't think we need to live in like this like perfect like Go ahead.
I'm sorry. You saying that reminded me, we never talked about the thing that we said we were going to talk about on that podcast.
Oh, shit.
I don't want to. Fuck. Oh no.
No, you're good.
You can finish your thought. It hit me so fast. I was like, oh yeah, okay. That was the thing.
Hit me with it. Fuck. What was the thing? That I think people just need to be responsible with what they're saying. So it's really awkward, because I think there's something to be said about the idea that like words get like hijacked and then like sort of hyper sensationalized to like make a point. So like when people talk about being like, oh, the word racist gets used too much, or the word like homophobic gets used too much, like I can see kind of where people use that. But at the same time, like words like, you know, PC or like overly offended, like we hear people say those kinds of things too, and it's like, well, where do we actually want to draw these lines? And I think you know, I don't want to live in a world where it's like you should be scared to say anything that's like slightly edgy, or something that's like slightly, you know, like you're sort of teasing with a little macabre humor or a little dark humor. Like I think it's okay. My whole thing, and I think I mentioned it when we talked about it, was like, I just don't think the expense should be at like a group of people. Like you can make a joke about a thing, but if the joke is that the thing like exists, like if you want to make a joke about like what it's like being a gay person, that's very different from a joke where the joke is the gay person. And I think that's kind of where it's like, especially if you have a platform, I think you have to just be cognizant of like what kind of messaging you're putting out. And maybe that's a lot to ask for, or maybe that's a lot to expect of people. But it's like, especially comedians, or if you're an actor, or if you're any kind of celebrity, like the shit you say holds a lot of power. And so, I mean, there's a term called dog whistling. I don't know if you're like familiar with people saying like, yeah. So, you know, there's a lot of language that people use that incites very specific ideas, especially for people that already hold certain values. So like when you start using words like degenerate, or, you know, what about American culture? Or like one that like, I'm saying it facetiously, but one that like triggers the fuck out of me is when people talk about like Western culture, because Western culture is something we hear a lot, but it's like, well, it's really vague, because when people talk about Western culture, they're not talking about South America, but that's in the West, or what period of Western culture. Or Western culture has changed a ton over the fucking past couple centuries. So it's like, what are we really saying? But when you hear that, a lot of people are like, oh, I know what Western culture is. Western culture means not the fucking barbaric Middle Eastern culture, you know, like it's fucking super weird. Like I know. So like, you know, I think you just need to be careful with what you're saying and just be like clear about your messaging. And as long as you're doing that, I don't think
it's weird, because
a huge problem.
When I hear that is not the intention I take away from that. And this could have...
You mean like the Western culture thing?
Yeah. Like, and this could be from growing up in South Carolina and like being exposed to that like heavily. But when I hear that, what I hear is someone who has lived a life one way and is being subtly forced to change over a period of time and doesn't want to. And that's not necessarily bad. Like, I don't think that those people are evil. I don't think that just because like someone, like I've had those conversations in my head. Like, I remember a point in time when I was a kid, like I think just a freshman going into high school, where it was literally black and white people that I grew up with. That was it. But as a freshman in high school, there was a large influx of Hispanic people moving to like that part of the U.S. So it wasn't a shock. It was just more so of me realizing that. And then I also knew a lot of my friends then that were like, all right, so yes, come here. That's cool. We're the land of the free. I get that. Like, by all means, come here. But I don't want to change for you. If you're like, their thought process is, if you're coming here, you should be the one making the changes, not me. And I mean, if you think about that and compare that to like a home or a house or something like that, like, you don't go to someone's house and then demand that they change their customs for you. So that's where the way I hear when someone says like, oh, Western ideals or Western culture or stuff like that. It's just someone who is pushing back against change. Now, the argument of, well, things always change. Like, change is inevitable. Like, that's going to happen. Yeah, you're right. Like, I'm not disagreeing with that. But it's also not fair to have those thoughts and then expect everyone to just be like, all right, cool, man, whatever you want. Yep. That's what you want to do now, and I don't get to do that. Okay, cool. All right, yeah, that's fine. Like, no one's gonna do that. Like, that's not fair. Right. Like,
and I think that's kind of where I'm like, you know, I think there are ways to use certain language or say certain things that I think are fine, but there are specific things that you can say or things that are said that are definitely like they sort of toe the line between like saying something and kind of implying something.
But I don't think it's like, fair to. This is the thing that I didn't think we talked about. And now I'm thinking about it. I think we did. It was in the conversation we had with Corey and Michael. We disagreed on intention. Did we talk about that?
Not.
I thought
we started, but then you and Michael talked a lot.
No. I'm saying when I had you on my podcast the first time. I don't.
Oh,
Did we? I think
no, I don't.
No,
think
we
we
did.
talked about
Okay,
it
so
that much.
that was the thing that like it sparked. I was like, oh yeah, we never really got into that. Like, I don't think it's fair to impose, and this is hard too because it's very possible that the person does intend it in a dog whistling way, where they're just towing the line, and they know what they mean, and the people that they want to know what they mean, they know what they mean too. But it's hard to impose that on somebody because at the end of the day, you can't read a person's mind. So
Yeah.
to just say, "Oh, you said those words, you must mean this." It's
Right.
That's
right.
not.
And I think that's fair. I don't think I would ever be trying to think of what I want to say. I don't think I would agree with someone saying that we should judge a person's intention or their meaning based off of like one thing they said or two things they
Sure.
But when we talk about like we can't read people's minds, that's certainly true. We don't know what exactly is going on in someone's head.
Sure.
But we have to infer what their intentions are based off of what they do. And I guess for me and I don't want to go too far down like a fucking philosophy rabbit hole or whatever. But I guess I lean more like utilitarian or not utilitarian, consequentialist. Where like for me what matters is like the outcome of something, not really like what you want to do. So like imagine a situation where like let's say you're a big name on the internet, or you're a celebrity, or you're some kind of like sports star or something, and like you tweet something that's not like meant like homophobic or whatever,
Sure.
but it's like maybe it talks or it deals with maybe it's something like, oh, like I don't care if you're trans, but like my daughter uses this like restroom, like I'm just a little worried. And maybe you don't like, you have no care or you have no thoughts about like, oh,
Sure.
like I actually don't want trans people to have rights, or it's just like a basic layman thought. You're just
This
like
person's genuinely just concerned about their daughter,
right.
That's
and let's
like,
say you send out this tweet, and then all of a sudden like on your replies you notice a lot of people that are like, yeah, fucking trans people are mentally ill, they're fucking sick, they're fucking degenerates, whatever. Like if you saw that and you're like, well, I didn't mean to be mean, so I'm not even gonna like address what's going on, and then you continue to do those things and it continues to propagate like those kind of responses, at that point like I'm not even concerned with whether or not you do actually have a problem. Like at some level, I don't even care if someone is racist or if they are homophobic. I care about whether or not what they're saying propagates that kind of mentality. And when it comes to that, that's where I say like I don't think intent matters. Because if what you're doing is leading to harm or leading to some kind of negative outcome, I don't think whether or not you mean to do it even matters to that.
I think
But that's where I come from.
I kind of agree with that. The only thing I think is it is hard, maybe impossible to separate being upset at them for saying something that is like offensive and being upset at them for saying something that propagates offensive speech.
Sure. And another quick distinction, just because I think people don't use it enough and I think it's important, is like when I talk to, and again, I don't know how it's ended up this way, but I've talked to a lot of people online. I've argued with a lot of people in person, online, and it's stuff as mild as just like I'm kind of a centrist and I don't know if I like fucking Ted Cruz or Trump more, and then I talk to those people, or I've talked to people who literally think like black and white people shouldn't live in the same country. I've talked to like straight up like Muslims shouldn't be here, they're fucking like invaders and shit like this, like actual just full blown like think of like the most alt-right like Islam is like gonna destroy our country, or like the US is like a puppet for Israel and the Jews control the world. Like these people are like fucking crazy. And for that kind of stuff I'm like, well, they obviously hold like some very strong thoughts, some very strong opinions, and when they talk about these things, it's very clear what their intention is. They want people to to think a certain way, and they want people to agree, or they want to get them to their cause, you know. And I just don't know.
Yeah,
I just don't know.
Man,
I just don't know about that.
The way I see or hear when people, and I guess this is a little bit of me, like, it's kind of devil's advocate-y kind of thing.
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
But it's more so of like, so the reason I get them, I understand why somebody would be like, oh man, the Muslims they're bad, they do all this stuff, and like what I hear when someone says that is not that they're saying those words. It's like, okay, how did you come to that conclusion? For some people, it's just the type of news that they consume, and they don't bother to educate themselves. For others, it's because they've been unfortunately impacted by it would be the same as if someone from what was that crazy Christian church? It was like Southern Baptist or
the
Westboro. Yeah, it would be the same thing as someone saying like, oh, Christians are horrible people and terrible, and then when you talk to them, it find out, oh, well, you were just assaulted by someone from that church. That's what I hear when someone goes like, oh, well, all Muslims are bad, or like blah blah blah. And if you find out like, I have less sympathy for a person who says something like that when it's just their news, like they just have consumed, they haven't bothered to do any research. I have a lot of sympathy for somebody who has genuinely their life has been impacted by some radical Islamist or radical like believer of any religion. Like, the problem is, to me, is the buck stops right there when they say a thing. No one finds out why or where those beliefs are coming from, and then they say, oh, you said this thing, now other people are saying these things, you're bad. It's like, they're not bad. They just had a certain set of life experiences that caused them to believe this way. Like,
yeah,
in the same way that I have, like the same way, like I've been fortunate to not been assaulted by anyone. Like I've lived in that regard. I've lived a very privileged life. I've never been like, I've never had any I've had like racist things happen, but like they've never been to the point where like my life was in danger. So but because I know, and I've met and talked to people that have had those things happen to them, it's very easy for me to go, okay, like, what is the underlying issue here? It's not, you're not a racist. Like, unless you just blatantly say some or do some wild shit, I'm like, you're not a racist. What happened? Like, that is what happens in my head. It's like, and no, yeah, I feel like not enough people do that. They just go straight to.
I think that's fair. I mean, I guess there probably is something to be said about understanding the justification for the way a person thinks, even if that doesn't validate their beliefs.
To me, I don't even see it as justification. Like, it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make, if they do something bad, it doesn't make it.
Sure. Sorry. Yeah. I think that's kind of what I was saying. I just used
I get
weird words. Yeah. Like I think there's a fair point to be made about being like, well, why does a person think what they think, even if what they think is bad, no matter what, no matter what the reason is that they ended up there. Also, I just remembered that the last thing I was saying, I totally derailed myself and I forgot the point I was trying to get at. But when I was talking about a distinction that I think should be made more often, there are things that people say that are, we would say like they're problematic. Sure. But I think there's a distinction to be made between someone being racist and saying something racist. Because maybe you say something that just is offensive or is indicative of some kind of like racist ideology. That doesn't necessarily mean you're racist, right? And that's kind of what I was saying before with like the tweet. Like, people can engage in like some kind of language or some kind of rhetoric where it's like maybe they say something about gay people or trans people where they don't actually hate these people. They just don't really know what they're saying, or they don't know how to phrase it right, or whatever. And I think there's it's okay to be like, hey, what you said is homophobic. That doesn't mean I think you hate gay people.
Sure.
But you should probably be careful with how you word stuff, because I think there is something like people will say something, maybe they don't even understand what's wrong with it, or they haven't even identified if there could be something wrong, because maybe we don't even agree that there is something, but they can't identify that it's even problematic, and someone will be like, you're homophobic, and to that person they're like, well, I obviously don't hate gay people,
yeah, like...
so the only reasonable response here is that you're wrong. And then there's no conversation to be had, because you're like, well, I know what you said is problematic, and they're like, well, I don't hate gay people, so what the fuck are we talking about? Yeah.
Are you familiar with the streamer Destiny?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He has a stance I think you would agree with, and I think I would agree with in that. I think I would just agree with. It was about like, because to him, the example he uses is basically like he says a lot of like offensive stuff with his friends, like off stream, like no one hears about it other than his friends, and the reasoning behind it is there's no harm there, because he understands that the people that he's making these jokes with understand that you're not putting out there that, hey, it's okay to make these jokes. It's more so of like, hey, this is funny, you get it because this is the humor. Yes, it is using like it's humor that, like, I guess some people would say is at the expense of someone. I hate that. I hate that thought process, because I don't think humor is at the expense of, or I don't think humor should be looked at with the lens of it being at the expense of other people. But if you hold, if that's where you are, like that's what the belief that you hold. Yes, that he's making those jokes, but because it's amongst friends, there's no harm there. His problem is because it with other people, when they do it in public or do it on Twitter or do it like in a social sphere that is not controlled, then now it propagates like more people to think it's okay to do it.
Yeah, and I think
as slightly hypocritical as that sounds, I guess.
No, like, I mean, I think that kind of falls more or less into what I was saying earlier about like just being responsible with like how you speak, right? Like if you know the group of people around you, you're probably way more comfortable with what you say around those people and how they're going to interpret it than you are if you're a public figure and there's 10,000 people watching your YouTube videos or 50,000 people that follow you on Twitter, and you're posting stuff that's like, LOL, look, I said the N-word, isn't that funny? And there's people that are like, what the fuck are you doing? Where it's like, not that I'm like, oh yeah, just drop them around your friends, but it's like, there are things that you could probably say around people that understand who you are, that you're more comfortable knowing like what the intention or what the result of that is going to be.
Sure.
Right. And that doesn't mean where it's like, oh, I can't say anything because what if my friend is secretly racist and I don't know, and then I say something about whatever. And I think there's a point where you can extrapolate it a little too far.
But that's the thing though. And I guess that's the argument for the online side too. But my thing is in social spaces, not online, but like I guess you can stretch it to being online too, but it's like I don't like the idea of being responsible for other people's reaction to the things that I say. Like I can only be responsible for what I say, like my intentions. Like I know what those are, even though it's impossible for other people to know that, but I do know what those are. I wouldn't say impossible. It's really hard for other people. People at a certain point, people can see like, all right, you're a piece of shit. Like this, like if you keep doing the same thing and be like, no. What do you mean? What do you mean that I'm this is terrible. I'm killing Jews. I'm not doing that. And he's like, there's dead bodies over there. You're like, but that I didn't have anything. Your name's on the camp, dude. Like it's like, so like I to a degree I think you can, but that's where I guess I pull back from what you were saying is like I don't like the idea of there's a joke that I don't, it's not even a joke, it's more of a meme, I guess. It's this dude that a channel that I watch, they found this guy's name on Steam and it's hilarious. It's basically a Squidward who has an afro. It has black skin, and that's it. And he is called Nigward. And it's like, I get it. I understand if somebody hears that or sees that and is like, what the fuck? But also, I cannot describe how much I laughed the first time I saw that. It killed me. Like, it was so funny. Like, both the timing and everything of it. And I get it. I understand, like, people getting offended by that, but I don't think that the intention of making something like that, or at least the way that it was used in the first time I saw it, it was not. They didn't bring that up. They didn't post that to their YouTube channel because they're like, hey, we don't like black people. Hey, we're gonna put this thing like, and in that channel's case specifically, the amount of backlash that they got from the people who did join or did see that video and were those type of people, and they're like, yeah, well, you're harboring this environment for these type of people. And it's like, no, they made a joke, and then those people came here. Like, it's not fair to them to be punished for the actions of other people. And
right,
I think I used to be in the stance of saying, like, well, they don't have any responsibility. There's nothing to do. The only thing I think you're responsible for in that case, I don't think you need to apologize. I don't think you need to do anything like that. All you have to do is be like, yeah, this shit that's going on right here, that ain't me. And then continue on with what the fuck you were doing. Like, that's it. That's all. That's all. Because it's like, if that's genuinely not you, if you're one of those people, then by all means, I guess, say what the fuck you want to say. But
I guess that's again part of where I'm like, I think the intention, because it's so easy to disguise like what you actually think.
What
maybe
is that?
Disguise is a loaded
what is
word.
This pet
disguise
behind you? I'm sorry. It's been
oh, that's a chinchilla.
Okay, all right. That's
yeah, they're just a fat squirrel. Sorry.
Gotcha. No, but my bad. I didn't mean. I'm
no,
sorry.
You're good. You're good. Sometimes I forget that she's visible on frame. I think that it's really easy to play off certain ideas that you may have as like humor. That's why like humor is really difficult to pin down, is because when someone's like really upfront and they're like, hey, like, I think the United States is a country for white people. I think at some point, hopefully, we can convince every non-white person to get out of the country. And if we can't, then it'll be violence and we'll force them out. There are people who just say that. And although that's like terrible, at least they don't make it a joke. And then you don't have to be like, oh, well, is it a joke? Is it satire? Is it a meme? Like, I don't understand. And like one of the people that, I mean, listen, I'm just gonna send it, dude. One of the people that like just tilts me into oblivion is Steven Crowder. I don't know if you're familiar with his content.
So let me. I don't think that he gets the comedy clause.
I'm upset he calls himself a comedian.
I also agree. He's not funny. Like
he's not funny.
Like if he says 100 jokes, maybe one or two will land with me. That's about it. Yeah. But like I don't find his type of humor funny. And I also don't think he gets to use the comedy card that I think Stephen Colbert and who's the guy that did the Daily Show?
Jon Stewart.
Like that they used to pull out all the time. I also don't think those guys get to do that, because when your show is both equal parts comedy and political. So because it is half and half, you don't like you've decided to make this hard for yourself, because you've upfront said that you have a political show, and he's very upfront about where he leans. Like he's very right leaning. Like
for sure.
To his credit, that's good. I think that's good, because that lets people know exactly what you're getting when you sign up to watch anything that he makes. So like you know, like, all right, if I'm watching this is the perspective that I'm getting.
My issue with him as far as the comedy goes is like, even using Jon Stewart as an example. Like Jon Stewart might talk about politics and comedy, or politics comedically, I guess is a better way to say it, simultaneously. But we know his positions. So like when he makes a joke about Trump, he doesn't pretend that he does like Trump. He's like, yeah, I don't like him and I made a joke. Steven Crowder will like play with like really kind of like homophobic things or kind of racist things. He had a skit that was like a kid dressed up in a baby outfit in a cage saying, Senor Trump, let me out, I want my taco, on like fucking Veterans Day or some shit. And you're like, okay, well, he would say, I'm not a racist, it's just a joke. And then you're like, well, at what point is it not a joke? So like there was a whole blow up with Steven Crowder, I think like a year or two ago. At
With
this
the
point,
Fox guy.
Yeah,
I remember
Carlos Maza.
Yeah.
Right, and there's no lack of footage of him calling him a lispy queer and a weak little fairy boy, and he has a shirt that says socialism is for F asterisk GS.
Yeah.
And he says that it's figs.
Yeah.
The fruit. And you're like, who are you fooling? Like, why? Just why? And then if you're like, oh, well, it's a meme, it's to trigger people. It's like, still why? Why go out there and put out something like that obviously, like, he has a fan base of people who genuinely just hate gay people. You're like, why would you make a shirt like that and then pretend it's not what everyone knows it is? And that's what I don't like, when people use comedy as a way to be able to walk things back. Like, if you're using comedy to just be like, I'm just upfront, like, I make jokes about Trump, but I don't like Trump, and so I make a joke about hating Trump, but it's a joke that shows what I mean. So if someone makes a joke about Islam, or a joke about Islam, or a joke about Jewish people, and then they're like, just kidding, and then they do it again and again and again, and they do it for 5 years, and you're like, well, I don't know if you're joking. And that's where, for me, I'm like, it really sucks, because pinpointing comedy and being like, well, I think people should be able to use satire. I think people like, I think there is value in using, language that people probably don't like to use if you're making a point.
Sure.
And not to do like the whole thing, but I'm like, I think there's something valuable, especially like in art, in a movie, or if you're, doing if you're just trying to make a statement, like, you can use provocative or like offensive language if you're trying to say something.
That Marvel comic that just came out, the new the new Warriors,
fucking Snowflake and Safe Space and
Screen Time and
fucking gender dysphoria or whatever the fuck. I have no fucking idea. Yeah, I saw that and I'm like, I don't know if this is like to make fun of it, if it's supposed to be like, we're taking the slurs back. That was the safe space.
That was their thing.
Yeah, that seems like another just unbelievably tone deaf giant.
That's exactly what that
$1,000,000 company.
Be good.
That's like, the kids will love this. Look, this character has no gender. Lol. And you're like, nice.
So like, my thing, I guess, with Steven Crowder is this: there was a point in time where I was subscribed to his channel, and this was 4 years ago. Subscribe to the guy's channel. There was a point in time where I was like, hey, he's doing the thing. He's like talking to people, like he would do those like change my mind things, and I was like,
change my mind is
cool. And then I guess I got older, or I started paying more attention to what was actually being said in those conversations, and I quickly realized that it wasn't that. The premise is good. The premise is good, and this comes back to where I was talking about, if you're doing the same thing over and over, we can kind of get your intention. Yeah. That's where I figured out, I was like, wait a minute, buddy. Like, you're not, your goal is not to get, even though you say like your goal is not to talk about these things, a change my mind segment is literally you trying to change someone else's mind. You're trying to, like, it's the exact opposite.
He has a message. I mean, we're talking about dialogue trees.
Right.
He literally goes to the change my mind with a binder filled with information, and then
that was one of the things where I was just like, dude,
he'll sit down with a binder and be like, look at this information I have. And if you're sitting behind him or in front of him, you're like, well, I can't fact check you, I don't know what the data was. And then when you say something, he's like, can you substantiate that? And you're like, well, I was just going to class. I didn't know I was going to sit here. Like, I don't know. And that's where I'm like, he's such a fucking dishonest person.
Yeah.
Because he makes this content that's like, I just want to have a good conversation and maybe we can teach each other. But it's like, well, you might have recorded 12 hours of footage and you found 40 minutes of it where you shit talk a random person. We don't know all the talk you had with them. We don't know every conversation you had that day. We don't know anything outside of what you've shown us. And what you've shown us looks like other people being really fucking stupid. And how am I supposed to trust that you're giving me the right information?
My rule of thumb is this: if you hear someone, and I say this a lot, so I'm also putting myself in this group. If you hear someone tell you that they're just here for a conversation, or they're just here to talk about ideas, and they never change they never change on anything. They're the same person 5 years ago that they are, then they are lying to you. Because that's not how conversation works. Like, the odds of you being right on every subject every time, so that you will never have to change your opinion on anything. It's like it's those are like not even casino odds. Like it's hilarious. Like that is where I guess the big turning point for me with him specifically was, where it's like I've never heard him say, "Oh, we were wrong about this."
Yeah, they
not
never concede.
Not once. And I'm like, then what are you doing here?
And there are things like when I listen to him, either that changed my mind or just other random videos, like I'll hear stuff where I'm like, well, I know that's wrong, or I know there's something being misrepresented, or just like, this is not like a fucking brag thing, but like I did debate for about 5 years. I'm really familiar with like logical fallacies or like just like general debate tactics. Not like, I can identify this maneuver, but like I can tell certain things people do. And he's really, really good at using like debate tactics to pull people away from information he doesn't want them to talk about, or to avoid subjects that he does not want to answer questions about. He's just really good at that kind of shit. And when he controls the entire perspective of a video, that's all you see. And if you were just a person that watches his content, you don't think about that kind of stuff, you're like, wow, he's really intelligent and he wins a lot of his arguments and he always knows what he's talking about. And I guess for me, one of the big issues with him and with the short group of people or short group of channels on YouTube specifically that I really dislike is I don't like bad faith actors. I don't like people that are purposefully disingenuous or like don't even really believe what they're saying, but they just want to say it or they want to mislead people. So like Steven Crowder is one, Candace Owens is another that I like really don't like.
I don't listen to a lot of her stuff. There are moments that like she says things that I'm like, well, that there was a point on Joe Rogan's podcast where she was on, and I was just like, what are you? I forget what the subject was, but it was a moment that was standing out to me. I was like, okay.
Fuck, it was global warming.
I think I think
it was that. I remember the exact thing too, where she's like, I'm just saying, do we really know global warming is real? I don't know, and I'm like, what the fuck? What the fuck?
I was like, okay,
so like crazy. Her PragerU. I don't know if you ever watched a Prager. Okay,
I don't think so.
There have been times where I'm like, I want to start a whole fucking YouTube channel just dissecting PragerU. Yeah, they're like 3-4 minute long videos that are just like the dumbest fucking crazy shit. That if you have any brain cells, you listen to and you're like, who got paid to make something like this? Who wrote this? And they call themselves, Prager University, so that people are like, oh, they're very intelligent.
That's strong.
It's just a fucking. It's a mess. But yeah, I don't dislike people, or I don't have an issue with people that just don't agree with me. Obviously, I can argue why I disagree.
Sure.
But I don't like people who are liars, or people who are like, the phrase like pushing agenda gets tossed around a lot. Like, I think everyone pushes. If you have a belief, you're pushing an agenda. You're pushing some kind of idea on people. That's normal. The question is like, are you purposefully lying to trick people, or do you really believe what you're saying? Yeah, I don't like liars.
Yeah,
that's where I'm at.
That's fair. I mean, I'm thinking of all the people that I guess when I first of all of the people that I guess I was very much in that whole like zeitgeist kind of like.
Yeah, it's really easy to get caught in that kind of thing.
But I will say, from all of that, the one person that I think is very um, there are things I disagree with this guy, but is Jordan Peterson. I think
Sure.
of that group of dudes, like, or people, I guess Candace Owens is in there, but of that group, it's like, I think he genuinely has the intention of wanting to help people. I don't think, and I could be wrong. Like, he could be fooling me. But I don't put him in the same boat as like Stephen Crowder and like Ben Shapiro.
Oh yeah, I don't think so either.
Guys.
Like I think there are specific things that I don't agree.
The
with
religious
Jordan
stuff
Peterson
for me with him is where I kind of go like, what's happening,
he
buddy?
He brings a lot of the the Judeo-Christian values kind of thing, and you're like,
if somebody wants to believe that way, that's do you think? And as long as you're not harming people, I don't care. Like, that's fine. It's just something that doesn't really resound with. It doesn't really.
I don't have an issue if someone's like, "This is how I would like to live." It's fine. When they're like, "You won't be happy unless you have," you're like, "Oh, okay."
Shapiro does that
like
a lot.
Couple things that we don't even talk about that, right? We don't have fucking time to get that guy.
I'm like, dude.
But no, Jordan Peterson, specifically like the Bill C-16 thing, I think he like misrepresents a lot. But other than that, like, he's a really difficult one to pin down, because there's stuff that he says where I'm like, I really very much fundamentally disagree with you, and then stuff that he says that's really actually valuable, but they're like very different things, where he's like, oh, you should take care of yourself and take care of your mental health so you can help other people. I'm like, that's good. And he's like, and then you have to, and then fucking remember that gender is biological and it's not defined by people. And I'm like, fuck it, it's really weird. But I wouldn't put him in the same group of people either. Like, he's one that I'm like, I don't think he lies. I think he believes what he believes. And I think that it's easier for me to swallow someone I disagree with who's just being genuine than, again, like I said before, like just fucking liars. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Blair White.
That name sounds very familiar. Like,
she's a transgender like YouTuber, but she's like a I don't want to say a far right, but she's like a right leaning transgender YouTuber, and that's sort of like her claim to fame, because transgender people tend to be like more
it's a very
liberal or whatever, right?
It's a very
and she
polarizing
tweeted
place.
out at one point, she was tweeting making fun of, like, there was some post talking about how I think it's like Tampax or something, that they were changing the like Venus logo off of their brand to be more inclusive to like transgender men who have periods. And she like made a tweet being like, this is so fucking stupid. Like, transgender like men don't have periods. And you're like, if you're trans, the only conceivable two options here are that you don't validate your own identity, or you have to accept what they did. And she just like, it's just like the normal conservative talking point, being like, oh, men don't have periods and women do, and so it's just really fucking. And for that, I'm like, you just have to be like grifting, right? You're like, you're just doing it because that's your paycheck.
I think the possibility is that there's the possibility that yes, that is what she's doing. I think the other possibility is that you hold, like, a person holds the belief that, and to be honest, I don't know if the science backs that up. Does the science back, like, I would imagine, like, me being uneducated and not looked up a single like article, done no research, it's very easy for me to hear like, oh, well, a transgender woman wouldn't have a period. Like,
transgender woman wouldn't. They removed the Venus logo for transgender men.
Wait. What I'm saying, so what we're talking about is a man that transgendered to being a woman.
Is a person that born in a female body, transitioned to be a male, so they have periods still.
Sure. Right.
But they identify as male, and all the like feminine hygiene products have like
gotcha.
feminine logos, so they're like, well, we want to make it available to men too.
Gotcha.
And she was like, well, that's dumb.
Okay.
And you're like, well, if you accept that you could be born as a man and transition into being a woman, you have to accept the other one too, or you don't even believe with what you did. Like it makes no fucking sense.
I
It's one of the most like it was the craziest shit. Like she gets criticized a lot as being like
Yeah.
a transphobic trans person, but
Yeah.
that is like the single craziest dumbest shit I've ever seen, because it doesn't even matter whether or not you think one way or think another way. What she said makes no fucking sense. Like it just doesn't even it's I don't know.
my
It's
whole
totally
thing with that
illogical.
is more so of like, all right, so I think in that specific conversation, there's a couple things you need to figure out before you can have that conversation. You need to define what, if you're making the term gender and sex synonymous, if that's the way you want to go, this is going to be a difficult conversation for you, because like like at some point you have to acknowledge biology, like that you can't just ignore that. So
Right.
And then that brings up the question of like, if you're acknowledging that, what do you call that? And if you call that male or female, then I get where someone's coming from. Like, I understand why somebody would have an issue with
Well,
that.
like I
In
can
her
understand a
specific
tweet
case,
like that.
it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah,
because yeah, like, but
like basically by what she said, she would either have to be just completely lying or not even believe she is a woman. Which
or
I would
believe.
assume, since she identifies as a woman, she does
I think-
believe that.
I think the third thing is that she believes that she can identify as a woman, but also be a man. If that makes any sense?
Sure.
Like, I think
It makes sense, but even in context, you're like,
no,
if we're talking about transgender men, then they can still have periods. So why would it be dumb? It just seems so strange.
Yeah. So this throws me.
Yeah,
off
I know.
sometimes,
It's
and
like
I'm sorry.
it's
We're
okay.
just like to me, when I say the word transgender, it's and the following male or female, it's always the end result, not the beginning, like not the starting point. It's always
that's how I'm using it too.
Yeah.
Like cis woman is like born a woman, identify woman, and then trans woman is born male, identify woman.
Small caveat: I hate that term with a passion.
You have mentioned this.
I hate it so much, because I feel like it's like no cisgender person met together and said, you know what, this is it, this is what we'll call it. Like I don't know where the term came from.
I don't know the etymology of that word. I don't know where it came from, but
it's so bad.
I guess trans also encapsulates anything non-cis. So technically, like non-binary people are.
That shouldn't be, in my opinion.
Well, it's like Latin. One is like, it's like the same and then the other. So it's like if you're cisgender, you're saying my sex and gender are the same. And then if you're transgender, you're saying my sex and gender aren't the same. But it doesn't identify what isn't the same about it. It's just like a holistic, you either do identify your sex with your gender and then you're cis, or everything else is trans, as kind of like a catch-all.
I think I have learned just in that moment that I genuinely hate the English language. It's just actually ass. It just doesn't work. It's just really bad. It's just so bad. I will literally learn any other language. Like, somebody post some languages in the comments of this video and I'll learn that language. It's so bad. But because when I hear the word trans, it's a movement. It's not just like,
sure, like
transportation, transition, transform. Like, they're all things to a thing. Like, it's A to B. Like, or sometimes it splits and goes. But the whole thing of the word trans is that it's going somewhere. There's a movement. So to hear that it can just be like, yeah, like it's not that. It's just whatever. And I'm like, just find a better word for that. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's so stupid.
Yeah.
But
words are weird.
It is. They are. We've been going for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
So we should probably find an endpoint here somewhere, so as to not get to that magical 3-hour mark. But this is fun. I always enjoy these, man. They're always, I always feel like I walk away from it with something, and hopefully everyone else does.
It's a good time. We were firing off podcasts for a while. Well, I say we, but I guess I mean I was doing podcasts
yeah.
with other people, yeah. For and you, yeah. The little group connected, and we were firing them off for a while. Fucking Transformers, and I'd go to their house. We'd be like, let's watch Donnie Darko, and we'd go to your place. We'd be, oh, let's talk about this. And now quarantine.
But that's why I was like, I gotta figure out a way to do this from home because like I can't not make stuff. And I almost wanted to make a video. And I was like, I'm sorry, I haven't made anything in like a week. But I think also people understand. Like everyone's going through this right now. It's not like
pretty.
I am waiting for the comment of someone just like, dude, what the fuck? Where's like, why haven't you uploaded?
Where's the new episode, Joe? Where is it?
It's like no one can come to my house, so
it certainly seems from your last little questionnaire, it seems like you'll have content for a while.
Yeah, maybe. The one thing I've learned in the time in doing this though is until I hit record, I don't expect it. Like it's because all that does is like lead me to get frustrated and disappointed. So until I'm recording, then it's an episode. Because
I actually saw your message about today late. I just didn't see it on my phone for some reason, which is why I answered at like 3 in the afternoon or something. But I had no idea. I was like in the back of my mind, I was like, I need to be ready to do a podcast tonight, but I don't actually know because when I responded to your post, Flip was like, we'll do it Wednesday, and then Flip was like, we could do it together, and then you liked my comments. I'm like, oh, so I guess I'm doing it Wednesday.
Did I not?
And then Sanders mentioned something too, and I was like, oh wait, is it Sanders,
what?
me, and Flip,
really
and Joe?
Bad now because I forgot about Sanders.
No, that's fine. So I was like, I don't know how many podcasts I signed up for. If it's 0 or 4,
I'm sorry, Mike. My bad, buddy. I totally forgot about that. I'm so bad.
It's fine. Fuck him, dude.
Fuck him.
He doesn't have He doesn't have a webcam anyway.
Oh man, but yeah, I got to figure out a way to make, because I feel like this is just gonna be how I make these for a while now. So I got to figure out a more.
If you might be able to get something. I don't know how I have no fucking idea what it looks like on your screen, but if I have it up as like full screen and it has like the 3 panels like kind of in the middle, you might be able to do like an overlay.
That's
on,
what
like,
I did.
OBS.
That's what I did.
Oh yeah.
I'll send you a picture of it. It looks a little bit weird now with since you're here and Flip.
Oh, Flip's just
Flip's phone died, by the way.
Beautiful,
which sucks.
High school graduation. Yeah.
I may cut this into 2. We'll see.
They sure are 2 very different
conversations. Yes, they are. And it's weird when I upload them together sometimes because I'm just like, okay, let's just throw this wide net out, see what happens. Like
this is as just about anything
as it gets. Yeah.
Pizza delivery, Adam and Eve dildos, Trump presidency, cis and transgender, responsible language usage.
Yeah. that is what you get from the Just a Joe channel.
It's just true millennium, or the true millennial experience.
Yeah,
it's just like dread, and then video games, and then just like the end of the world, and then you're like lol, vibrator.
Lol diddles.
Yep.
All right, man. You want to shout out your Twitch channel again?
Sure. Yeah. I play games on Twitch and sometimes just chatting because I'm No Content Andy at twitch.tv/StephenGalaxy.
I think your channel is doing really well, which is good.
It seems to be doing pretty good so far.
Your channel is doing far better than mine, which is
I don't know.
It is.
It's a good it was like a spike, and then we're like kind of going into normal Twitch territory
which
now.
But like it's weird for me, like as I said earlier, I was like, I don't think I'm going to stream anymore. I don't think you should stop streaming. I think you should keep streaming. Because the reason I'm saying that is because you're obviously something you've done works. So
hopefully I figured it.
If you stop it, you may not be able to get that back. So
yeah, there's definitely. I started streaming again about maybe 3 weeks ago or something like that, just as like I was starting like a video game blog
Mhm.
that I was like, oh, I'll just write on the side, and then since I'm going to be playing games anyway for the blog, I'll just stream it and then whatever. And I didn't have a face cam and I didn't have anything fancy and I didn't set up anything. And then the first couple days it was just going so well. A lot of just people know,
Yep.
but still I was like, oh, it's going pretty well, so
Yeah.
I guess I'll just kind of. And now the blog doesn't even exist, and I'm just
That's what I was gonna say.
Twitch,
Like,
YouTube, all this other shit. So
yeah,
but
whatever works, man. Thanks again.
of course.